killer tier list. So the best I can come up with and the fairest way to do it, I think, is literally just how good each killer is playing as them. I don't know if I should do it also based off of how fun they are to play against or how fun they're not. I mean, I guess we could do it that way as well. I think that does play a huge factor. So we'll do a little bit of everything. So first of all, I have never played as or against Pinhead, and I haven't done Nemesis either. So I'm just putting them in the middle, getting that out of the way. I think I played against Nemesis once. I stopped playing. Oh, I think I came back a little bit for like these last couple. I played literally since day one for all of these people, and then I think around the time like Deslinger came out was when whenever they did the huge UI changes, definitely when I was out, but I was also playing a little bit less around then. But anyway, we'll kind of start in the back. So I forget this dude's name. Anyway, I don't think he's that good. I wouldn't call him D because I think he has some decent stuff, but I think he is more just dependent upon perks as well as what add-ons he has on his stuff. I don't think he's that good of a killer because you have to do a whole lot just to down somebody specifically, or you could just hit them instead. So I feel like his ability can be deemed unuseful or worthless, but it could also be used very well. It also depends on the map, but I don't think he's that good. But it is what it is. That's just my preference on him. Now Trapper, I think I have to put Trapper in the A tier. One, because he's so fun to play as, to set up traps, around, like the shack window or in pallets and everything. And we have all been that survivor that it's so... Dead by Daylight is so fun in the very beginning when you don't know who it is and you can't figure it out, and then the first thing you hear is somebody's ankle getting snapped in a bear trap. Like, I think he is the most fun to play against because you literally don't know where the traps are at and what's going to happen for the most part. Like, a lot of the other killers, like the Doctor, are super annoying to play against. And some are for sure scary. Like, I would say Michael, as far as like the scary factor, is definitely up there as well. Like, it actually makes you enjoy being chased compared to some of the other people is not so fun. Like Leatherface is fucking annoying, but he is a good killer and he has good perks. So I would say Trapper's perks aren't that amazing, but I think a lot of the original killers are hit and miss with their perks. But that's just is what it is. The Blight, I don't see a good reason to play the Blight other than to, I don't think anybody's going to be D tier because there's obviously, certain builds or add-ons and everything that you could deem very worthy. But I think the fact that the Blight has to bounce into something is just stupid. I don't see a benefit of it. I don't really remember his perks too well, but I don't remember them being like game-breaking good or anything like that. So he's definitely on the lower tier for me. Let's do Doctor. I think... Man, this is difficult. Q, you're gonna hate me, but the boy's an A tier. He just is. I think he's probably the easiest killer to play as, the hardest killer to play against. One of the hardest killers to play against. I think this dude, literally just the fact that you're walking around can find survivors automatically is fucking stupid. I think his shock is OP. Yeah, it's so difficult to play against him. And then the fact that they added skill checks to break the madness. Yeah, he's just so easy to play as because you're guaranteed minimum, unless you're just bad or the survivors are gods, you're guaranteed like a minimum 3 kills. If not, just all 4 complete wipe, to be honest. But playing against him, like D tier playing against, hate the fucking dude, needs to be nerfed for literal years, but you know. No, just get in a locker, right? It's so easy all the time. Like, get the fuck out of here. Okay, let's do Deslinger. I think Deslinger's also C. Maybe B. I'll put him in B, actually. I think he's very hard to play, but I think if you can hit the shots, that he's very useful. I think being able to reel in survivors. I literally have a clip of Jake running through the exit gate getting ready to leave, and I shot him and downed him and killed him and got me all 4 the Adept Deslinger that game because of it. So there are uses, but he's still very hard to use, and I don't really... His perks are okay. They're not game breaking, but there are some that, you know, if you need a filler perk, his are useful for sure. Oh, let's see. Let's do a Michael. I don't think anybody's actually probably going to be S tier. I think... damn, yeah. I think Michael has to be probably S tier, actually. I think just a huge factor of him being one of the most fun to play against, and no matter what, he's useful to play as, whether you're, you know, there's so many different variations you can play, whether it's literally just stay at tier 1 Michael, which is scary because you can never hear him until he's basically grabbing you off the gen, or unlimited tier 3 Michael, which is the most annoying version, but also the scariest. And then obviously any Michael in between. But I think his perks are not that good at all, I would say. I wouldn't even use his perks like, you know, on someone else unless absolutely just didn't have another one or something. I would say that's his worst part about him is his perks, but he's definitely fun to play as. I would argue the only reason why I would argue better than Ghostface is because you can stop Ghostface from like marking you, which is almost the same as Michael tearing up. You just can't stop him from doing it. He can basically always use his ability and get better. But again, the biggest factor is I think he's probably one of the most fun to play against as a survivor. Definitely has some good ass games with Michael. Wraith. I think Wraith is just B. I feel like Wraith is probably the best for a new killer coming into the game, a new player that wants to play killer, because you can literally just camp hooks while you're in your invisible state, and that's what every Wraith does. The perks, meh. I mean, again, you're not really going to use them. Maybe here and there depending on who you're running and what type of build you're running, but yeah, Wraith is, I would say, probably the best killer for new players that want to play killer, and one of the more annoying ones to play because every Wraith literally just, you could say face camp, but every time you are playing a Wraith and you go to get somebody off the hook, that dude's gonna bing bong and be right there. Like, it's almost a guarantee. And if he's not, it's because he's bing bonging on somebody else. Nurse, I would have to say Nurse is A, and here's the reason. If you use her just a few times, play a few back-to-back games with her, and I guarantee you're already going to be better with her. She literally can be arguably the most dangerous killer in the game. And I think her perks also are, like Nurse's Calling is useful no matter who you're playing as. And it's even, better if, Survivor's running something like Iron Will, which is, a relatively highly used perk. Yeah, I think Nurse has huge upside, but it will take you a little bit to get used to her. It's going to take you a little bit to get good with her. But like I said, just make yourself play like just a few games with her back to back to back, and you're already going to be blinking way better and understanding how to use it. And once you play enough, you're literally probably the scariest killer in the game, arguably one of them for sure. The only reason why I wouldn't put her in S is just because she is difficult to use and to get used to for sure. Hag, damn, my girl, she got nerfed so early on in the game, and they just haven't done anything to her. I think I have to put her in A, and the only reason why I'm going to slide her into A, other than the fact that Hex Ruin is probably the most killer used perk in the game, except maybe like Barbecue and Chili or something, which is Hex Ruin is hers. But she is probably the best late game killer in the game for sure. The fact that you can just mark all 3 generators and be able to blink to them. And if you're just doing your rounds on the gens, you know that they're just crouch walking around, so you're bound to find them. The only bad thing about that is if they're running urban evasion, but still, not a bad killer at all. The traps are good, throughout the entire game, but honestly, she just gets better the later the game goes on, which most killers don't. Most killers, you have, a certain window, and I also think, obviously, Hex Ruin, as long as the Hex doesn't break, you're bound to have a pretty good game with Hag. Let's see. Let's do the Plague. I think Plague is just I think her perks carry her for sure. Her ability, the fact that you can puke on people is good, and you can puke on, gens or pallets and whatnot, and you can make some add-ons that make it pretty nasty to where it stays on there for a very long time. But I think other than that, it takes so much puke to injure someone, unless again you're running add-ons, that she's not necessarily that great. I think she's more of just like I don't want to say a utility killer, but you're probably going to end up doing a lot more just melee hits than you are causing people to take damage from your puke type of thing, which, obviously you're just trying to puke on them and infect everybody, and hopefully eventually do it, but, sometimes if you keep puking on them, they will become injured. But to get to that point, you probably just could have hit them anyway. But she is sometimes difficult to play against. Again, I think between her perks and possible add-ons, depending on what she's running, definitely carry her. I think she can be moved up or down depending on what's going on. Oh, alright, let's do Ghostface. I think Ghostface is arguably, I think he can be a better Michael because he can essentially not be heard the entire game if he wanted to be. The only reason he's not as good as Michael, one, because I feel like he is less fun to play against, because of the factor that he doesn't have heartbeat pretty much as long as he wants, but also the fact that if you're not using the ability correctly as far as marking people, and you're just doing it out in the open where people can stop you from marking them, then he's not as useful. Then it's basically like he's just a pig almost. He does have some decent perks, and I think he could arguably be in the S tier because he is essentially a tier 1 Michael the entire game if he wants to be, but I think he's can be easier to deal with if you're if you know who you're facing and you're paying enough attention. But definitely top tier and not difficult to use at all, really. I would say the hardest part is using the mark ability, but even that isn't, you know, you could literally just stand there and just do it if you really, you know, don't want to learn. Legion, I don't know. Legion is difficult. I think I have to put Legion in B. And the reason for that is just because solely the fact that if you mess up your ability a few times and you miss some hits, then it can really cause you to fall behind or at least take away too long on chases or even just fully lose the survivor. I don't really remember his perks being too great. I don't remember them very much of his. His ability is good, you know, being able to sprint is obviously disgusting, as well as vault pallets. But I think if you are missing, again, if you're missing your hits or you're taking too long, then I'm not sure how useful he is. Now again, obviously you could argue that any of these killers with the right build or the right map or, you know, the right player are S tier, and then, you know, same thing with no build, no perks, wrong player, they can be D. But overall, what I've played as and against all of these killers, I would say Legion is like a mid-tier killer. They're definitely better ones and easier ones to play that'll get you better results, and then there's much harder ones as well as much worse ones. Let's just do Hillbilly. I think Hillbilly is difficult. I think Hillbilly might have to be B. I think him being able to travel the map very quickly is very, very good. His perks are okay. Again, he's one of the original killers, so his perks aren't necessarily that great, which we've actually gone through all the original killers now. But I think depending on, again, the map and how much he can move with the chainsaw, and if you're not hitting your chainsaw, then he's not necessarily the best. I think he's very difficult to play against. I think even partially as sometimes trying to use the chainsaw can almost put you in worse positions than if you would just, you know, try to hit them or run around without using it as much. But I do think that the upside for him is very high, but I think the downside for him is very low as well. So just kind of, I think a lot depends on a lot of other aspects as far as like map, add-ons, perks for him. But like I said, upside huge, downside is probably just as much. Demogorgon. I would say Demogorgon is B. I don't think he's that great. I think the only reason why I'm putting him as B and not C is just because he has so much in his kit. I think the fact that you can teleport around the map, as long as you find, you know, one of your teleport spots. I think the fact that you can pretty massively lunge is very good. I think his perks are pretty decent, but I think that is literally all that carries him, which you could argue that for any killer, but if you take any of that away, or don't think about his stuff so much, he's not that good. I think the teleport can be iffy sometimes, as well as the survivors being able to close them and stuff. And it does take time. It's not like a hag teleport where it's basically instant. And I think, again, the lunge, while very good, I think it's like a lot of other abilities in this game where if you miss, you're arguably worse off, and it does take time to use the lunge. So I feel like if you're not using the teleporter, or whatever you want to call it, the upside down shit, or you're not using enough of the lunges or missing them, then he's literally just the most basic killer in the game. And I don't think those are exactly fully useful either. I think if the survivors aren't paying attention, or if you have your teleporters in a good spot, I think he can be very good, probably A tier. Again, I think if you're hitting the lunges, then obviously, again, bump him up. But you can't jump over pallets. You can break them by hitting them with the lunge for sure. You can't jump through windows using it, which I always thought if you could do both of those, but that would probably make him pretty OP. People would just do that anyway. So I understand. But I think his kit carries him for sure. For sure. Oh, the pig. Amanda Knox. I unfortunately think I have to place her in A tier. I don't really enjoy playing as her or against her too much anymore. For a long time I liked playing as her, but I think, I don't know. I mean, having no heartbeat for the entire game if you wanted is good. I think people can register or hear the fact that you're getting ready to attack them from your crouch position can make her difficult, but I completely understand why they have it and why they definitely need to keep that shit. The fact that she can prolong the game arguably forever almost if she keeps putting your traps on your heads that you have to go take off. I think she's definitely just a person that keeps prolonging the game for as long as possible to get all her kills, or to have somebody just get their head smashed in because they couldn't get the trap off, or accidentally run through the exit gate if they don't know what they're doing. But her perks are pretty decent too. Definitely not bad. I think she's overall a solid killer, but I think she's just more, I don't know, I feel like she's just not everybody's favorite to play as or against, at least not anymore. I know she was up there for a while, but I think some other people just kind of came out that were arguably better than her. Oh, alright, let's do the Oni. I think the Oni is mid-tier. I think he probably, even more than the Hillbilly, has an even bigger upside possibility, but an even bigger downside possibility as well. You have to get everybody's blood, so that means you have to hit people, which is fine. And then you have to, absorb it, and then use your ultimate. Well, your ultimate essentially makes you sprint with the chainsaw like Hillbilly, or hold down your attack button for a few seconds to then slam down, and if you miss, then you're just slamming the ground for a few seconds. So again, I think the upside for him being able to hit someone with his attacks like that and sprint is huge. If you miss your attacks or don't find anybody or whatever, then I think literally his ultimate or ability, whatever you'd like to call it, is essentially useless, and then he's just a basic killer with nothing. So again, I think, I've played as and against Onis that, just slap everybody down with ease, and I've played as and against Onis that miss all their shit, and they're arguably the easiest killer to play against. So again, I think the upside and downside for him is probably the largest in the game. If not, it's definitely very much up there. Ooh, man, all these killers are good. I'm gonna have to go twins. Where do I put the twins? I think they go in A, and the only reason why I'm putting the twins in A is just because they can quote unquote be in two spots at once. They have okay perks, but the ability honestly is decent because a lot of people can think that, multiple people can think that the killer is on them when somebody's wrong, you know? It's almost like having two killers, but one of them is always dormant at the same time. So you can definitely use that to your advantage. I think they're definitely a very scary killer to go against sometimes, depending on how well they are, obviously. And they do take some getting used to playing as, but I think they have an overall very solid kit and can definitely, even with people that are, in a party or communicating or whatever, can be difficult to play against because, like I said, multiple people think that the killer is near them or on them when they're not. Let's see. I'm gonna have to put Clown in the B tier. I really like the Clown. I think he's probably one of my favorites. Definitely top couple for sure. But I do think he was more of just a killer to stop looping. I feel like that's what Dead by Daylight does a lot, is instead of doing something to their game, they create killers or perks or something to stop something from happening. Palette looping will always and forever be a problem in the game for sure, but I think the Clown is probably the best to deal with it, just because he can throw his tonics and slow everybody down and kind of blur their vision a little bit. The blur is not that bad, but it is what it is. But definitely the slowdown can help him reach his target and hit him, if not down him. But other than that, I don't think he's too amazing. I think he's just solid at what he's supposed to do. I think he's just a very solid killer in the sense of, making it easy for him to get his downs and get his kills. And his perks are pretty good actually too. Definitely no bad ones. Nothing too game breaking, but they're definitely ones that, if you're leveling the other killer up, and you have some clown perks, you're not mad. Oh, this is difficult because all these killers are questionable. I'm gonna have to put Pyramid in A, and the reason being is a lot of him being successful is based upon his ability to, create his train tracks on the ground. I think he's a great way to deal with, people that are going to drop pallets and whatnot if you hold it right. People that are, in buildings, as long as you hit them right, again. Kind of like a nurse blink. But I do think that that kind of can make him difficult to play as, because if you're not hitting those, then again you're falling behind and taking a little bit too long. I think his perks are pretty decent. Again, nothing crazy. Honestly, probably wouldn't even use too many of them on other killers that I'm leveling up, or even him, you know, once I level him up enough. But he definitely has a big upside. He's definitely good as long as you hit your train tracks. And also the fact that you don't have to always hook people if you're creating your, I just call it the barbed wire on the ground. If you're creating your stuff that the survivors run into, then you can just put them in, you know, their own hook, quote unquote, their own little executioner chamber type of thing. So you don't have to always waste time picking them up, taking them to a hook, or getting flashlighted or anything like that. So that's definitely a plus and something cool and different, and something to definitely try to work on using a lot, or as much as you can, as well as the add-ons that make that even better. Now, my girl, the Huntress. I have to put her in A. I don't think she's an S. As much as I love playing as her, I think she, again, can be a little bit difficult to use, but I think also the biggest downside to her is that her perks are not that great. I think she has one good perk, which is Huntress Lullaby. That's a hex. So one, if it is not pipped up a lot, it's not that good, and two, if it's destroyed, then you better be a good killer or have better perks as your other ones. But she has some huge upside, being able to essentially hit you through and around anything, from basically any distance of the map. Somebody throws down a pallet, you hatch it, you hit them. It's that simple. The only downside again to that is you have to go pick them up in lockers, but you can definitely add more hatchets in your that you can carry, or even make them instant down hatchets. So if you throw a hatchet and hit them, then they're instantly on the ground instead of just injured. Yeah, I think she's definitely one of the best. She's at first a little bit difficult to use, less difficult than the nurse for sure, but it's going to take you some getting used to of aiming the hatchets and being able to hit people. But once you realize that when you're following a survivor enough and they throw down the pallet, you just kind of, you know, wind up your hatchet instantly and just let it go, and it'll hit them anyway. So that's definitely a huge buff to her. But again, I think her perks are probably one of the worst group, and somewhat fun to play against. She's kind of fun to play against because you're always a little bit on edge. You never know when she's going to throw, or especially you don't know if they're insta-down hatchets at first either. Leatherface, probably S tier. I don't like the guy. I hate playing as him. I hate playing against him, but he's one of the fastest in the game, just naturally walking. If he chainsaws you, you're insta-down. And he has arguably one of the best perks in the game, which is barbecue and chili, that every little bitch uses, which allows you to, once you hook a survivor, you can see all other survivors that aren't within, I think, like 15 meters of you, which is like the first pip, so even smaller. So unless somebody's basically very close to you on the person that you're hooking, you can see all their survivors and just go and get them as well. There's definitely some good add-ons that you can use on the chainsaw as well to make him even better and faster. Honestly, the only downside to him is if you somewhat do use the chainsaw and aren't hitting, which, you know, again, you don't even have to. He's so fast that you'll just be able to hit him and then hook him and find him and keep that cycle going. But yeah, the only downside is honestly if you're just kind of bad using the chainsaw, but then you can just not use it and he'll still be a successful. I think he's probably one of the most difficult to play against as well. I would say the Doctor is probably the hardest as far as being constantly annoyed, but that's definitely Leatherface as well. I don't like him. I'd put him, I don't even know. I'd put him B tier as far as like ability, but I know that he's good. Every time that I've played as him, it's been a pretty easy cakewalk, especially if you have other really good perks for him. But yeah. Let's go Spirit next. I think, man, honestly, I think Spirit and Freddy have to also go in the S tier, and here's why. I think Spirit, the fact that you can't always see her is very difficult. I think her perks have huge upside, though they do have huge downside. But I think she can play a lot of fast movement or just mind tricks on survivors. I do honestly, as much as she wrecks me almost every time that I play as a survivor, I do enjoy playing against her because you just never know what she's gonna do or where she's actually at. And her perks are not that bad. They're pretty decent, especially if used correctly. And honestly, with other perks, it's even, with certain other ones, she even becomes more crazy. And the biggest reason old boy Freddy is S tier, when this man originally came out, he was pretty garbage, pretty hard to be consistent. I think his perks are okay. Nothing crazy. I think he's all his perks are basically for late game, which is okay, but I think his perks are not too useful throughout the whole game. He definitely just ramps up as the game goes on, which again is alright, but he used to not be that great. And then what they did was they literally gave him everything in the world. So all you had to do with original Freddy, you couldn't see him, and then he would put you in the dream state, and that was the only way he could attack you, was when you were in the dream state. But you could, mess up a generator to wake yourself up, or have someone that is not in the dream state wake yourself up. As long as you missed a skill check, you would purposefully miss a skill check and you'll wake up. Then they added it to where every so many seconds, especially depending on the add-on he has, everybody automatically goes in the dream state. And no matter what, he can hit you whether you're in it or not. But when you're in the dream state, everything is slower, harder, just like the original Freddy. But now, on top of that, he can also teleport from generator to generator, and he can put little pools of blood down on the ground to make it to where if you run over them, they yell and slow you down, so then he knows where you're at and you're a little bit slower for a few seconds. But if you put it around a pallet or something, or whatever, he can probably get you. So now he literally has everything. So he's probably the most OP killer in the game last time I checked, just because of he can teleport whenever he wants virtually. Everybody is slower for at least minimum half the game, no matter what, and that can even be more depending on add-ons again. And he can. Oh, don't forget, too, dream pallets. You can do that as well. So that's a whole other thing. So yeah, there can be some fake pallets that you're running around and try to throw it down. It's not even real, and then he hits you. So yeah. He's probably the best in the game, though he is very annoying to play against. Basically, free good game anytime you play Freddy. So that's the only reason why he's in S tier. If it was old Freddy, I'd probably put him in B, But yeah, they definitely need to nerf him, which by the time, I'm sure right now if I got on, which this is almost April of 22, I'm sure they probably have adjusted him, possibly, I would hope, but knowing the DBD devs, probably not. He's fine, right? Just like the Doctor. But anyway, this is my killer tier list. Let me know what you guys think, where you guys would switch people, add people, move people to. Again, I try to do it as best as far as their ability, their perks, but also, possible perks that you could do with them, as well as, how fun, hard, or not fun it is to play against them. I think that can also be a huge factor. That's kind of part, no, there's no other game like Dead by Daylight. There's no other game that you can get chased by all these iconic killers. Yo, okay, Friday the 13th. Wow, okay, that's one guy. That's Jason. Okay, so pick one of these licensed killers away, and then that's your game. Okay. But yeah, let me know what you guys think.